Problems. Here we are. We welcome you back in with another of Puck the Huskies podcast brought to you by Georgetown Brewery, locally owned and operated by two diehard Huskies, Manny and Roger. I'm sure at Friday night we're drinking a lot of their Manny's and Rogers probably. They've been pouring the best local craft beer for the past 23 years, makers of Manny's, Bodie, Rogers, and host of your other favorite beers. Tap room open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. Visit them at georgetownbeer.com. Elise Woodward, sideline reporter extraordinaire, Jordan Reffett, 19-time all Husky defensive tackle there for the University of Washington. Elise got the prettiest background in the world right now in that backyard.
Man, I'm sorry. I just got to take the office outside when it's 70 degrees outside in September. I mean, come on.
You got to do it.
Almost October.
I know. I'm hoping it's supposed to be like this for another at least 10 days, guys. So, yeah. This is my office in the meantime.
Love it.
Elise, let's start with you first. How I want to know this from a serious, before we get into the game, just like a serious standpoint because of the travel back and forth. What was the travel like going back to New Jersey, coming back? I mean, I obviously didn't play, but I mean, you're on the sideline and dealing with all of that, which is new. How did it affect you?
I mean, it was long. I mean, there's no question. But I will say that because they do have two planes as opposed to the one, I think that probably helped. Both the players, certainly for me, I had a window seat and Tony Castricone was in the aisle. We had a middle seat. So, I mean, you could stretch out. It was great. Much better than before. And I know for the players, that's why they chose to have two planes. Part of it is so that the guys aren't cramped in there with 300-pound dudes. So that was better. We all left right after the game ended and East Coast time was 1 a.m. I personally, the 520 bridge was closed, which was just, I love WASDOT. Just ask me about how much I love WASDOT getting home. And, you get to UW at about 5 a.m. and then I get to go all the way to 45th and then all the way I-5 and then 90 to get back to the east side at 5-something in the morning, and then I nestled into my bed at 6:30 a.m. Saturday morning, and then woke up at about 10:30 and was ready to roll. So, I mean, we did that. We've done those in the past. We did those every year. Arizona was a night game, or Arizona State because of the heat down there. Every year traditionally we've had at least one, if not two, games where you're getting in at 4, 5, 6 in the morning. They suck. And it takes a while to get used to it. But for the guys, I think it was really good that they had all of Saturday to relax. It was a Friday night game. So, I mean, that's the least of their worries, to be honest, guys. I'm just thinking about them and they did so many good things and they didn't get the win, just like the Apple Cup. It's the same exact feeling for me. Like, you should have won that game if you didn't hurt yourself with these dumbass penalties. And I mean, who would have thought that a kid running on the field to celebrate like a yard does it right in front of an official, and that not only takes away the possession, then they score right before halftime to take all the momentum at halftime. Like, you could not write that. If it was a Disney movie, you'd be like, yeah, that scrap that storyline, man. There's no way that would happen, but it did. So they somehow keep finding ways to shoot themselves in the foot, which is unfortunate because they did so many good things and they outplayed Rutgers in so many ways.
Jordan, what were your takeaway from the game? I would assume something similar to what Elise's experience was.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where when you actually watch the game and you're really excited because they're running the football. Jonah Coleman's busting big runs. Dennis Boston's making big catches. They're getting first downs. They're getting stops. I mean, on defense. So you're thinking to yourself, man, we're dominating. And then you look at the scoreboard and you're like, what is going on here, right? And this Husky football team is an anomaly this year where, all the metrics, I mean, will tell you that this offense is one of the top offenses on the West Coast. This defense has been elite, but they cannot score in the red area. So it's a very unique situation, and it's not just not scoring in the red area, it's the timing of the gut-wrenching, I mean, just dick-tugging penalties that they have. And it's unreal. The timing has been unreal. You could not, if you were the other team, and you could say, I'm going to go ahead and pick when I get these 15-yard penalties, okay? the other team, your competitor, your opponent couldn't pick a worse time for you in these penalties. So, so many good things, like Elise said. I'm super optimistic about the future. I have to rein myself in and rein Husky fans in because Jed Fish has been here for 7 or 8 months, and this staff is brand new, and it's a whole new roster. And you got the OG guys, you got the Arizona guys, you got the freshmen, and really the leadership, I think, is really still forming on this team. And I'm hoping and praying that it gets better as we get going down the road, because they have a ton of stuff to build off on. And but yeah, it was unreal. You almost have to laugh. It was unreal how untimely and just horrific those penalties were. I mean, they don't turn the ball over. Will Rogers is got like the best stats as any QB across the country. I mean, it's unreal. Jonah Coleman has a career day, and they score, 18 points. So it was, and Grady Gross, who's been lights out his whole career. The Cougs know that, and he misses 3 field goals. It's just, it's one of those things where, like Jed Fish walking off the field, you could almost see it was like unbelievable. I don't know how. I mean, called a great game. A lot of things happened that went the Huskies' way, but except the scoreboard.
Yeah, it's like they're doing the hard things really well, and then the easy things, they're screwing it up. So you look at it and you're like, okay, can you run the football? Yeah. Can you move the football through the air? Are you balanced? Absolutely. Has Will Rogers been efficient? Yeah, he's completing 70% of his passes. He's got 10 touchdowns, no picks. Like, the hard things, their offensive line has been way better than I think most people could have anticipated.
They were amazing on Friday.
They're opening up holes. They're pass pro. They didn't give up a sack. They did not give up a sack on the road. And yet they have 2 losses that are just painful. And I mean, everybody knows that the bottom line is, are you going to get a win or not? They should be 5-0, and they're 3-2 instead. So, I mean, I think it's, for the program, I think it's, now the really tough part of the schedule comes up. And I think the hard thing is you can trip on what's behind you. You can get pissed about it. You can start feeling sorry for yourself. Oh, we're unlucky. Oh, we had to do this. Or they can say, okay, we just dominated in a lot of different areas. Just quit doing the stupid ass dumb stuff that is preventable, and they can beat Michigan. I don't know if you watched that Minnesota game, but they jumped out to a big lead. Minnesota figured some stuff out, started moving the ball through the air in the fourth quarter. It was a 3-point game. Michigan hasn't blown anybody out, so they've been involved in some really tight contests. So
they can't throw the ball. They can't make a forward pass. I think they're averaging like 42 yards through the air. I mean, Michigan's very beatable. Very beatable.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to push back on they should be 5-0 line.
Of course. I was waiting for Puck's face to just melt and get him turned.
Because I tuned in to the post game and I heard Greg Lewis say the same thing. To me, this Rutgers game is not like the Apple Cup. But
it was worse. 100%. Yeah.
There's one stat they won the Apple Cup. It was total yards. That was it. I don't know. I understand that if they made more plays, is there a chance? But I think it discredits them a lot in that game. Rutgers game, that team's terrible. That's a terrible football.
You know that they beat Virginia Tech, who went down there and beat Miami on the road, right? So, I mean.
They didn't beat Miami on the road.
What's that?
Miami's undefeated.
No, I know that. So, Virginia Tech caught that ball in the end zone. So I was being facetious, right? So they go down there and play Miami to the last hair, right?
But Rutgers isn't that good. I mean, they're a one-dimensional team.
Terrible. But what's weird is that Rutgers might end up with a 10-win season because you know what's on their schedule? Not Ohio State, not Michigan, not Penn State, right? So they got a really good running back. People don't understand too, playing your first road game with a whole new coaching staff, all new travel, all new stuff. This was an absolute great performance by the Huskies in every area except scoring points and not getting penalized. So I know Coug fans want to say that the Rutgers is terrible, but it's funny. They're a very well-coached team. Greg Schiano knows what he's doing. They're very tough at home. And right now, like I said, they might be a 10-win team just because of their schedule.
Okay, so then if it's, what does that come down to then? The penalties in the red zone. Is it coaching?
I mean, I think it's a combination of both. It was
players.
Yeah, I mean, listening to Jed Fish at the press conference today when I was over at UW. I mean, he mentioned it's a handful of plays. It's a small sample size. It's just they're crushing, and I mean, I think that's the real issue for that. They're untimely. You get down there and they do all the work and they're good getting down to the red zone, and then the obviously we know the 4th and 1 or the 4th and 2 in the Apple Cup, that was brutal. They're just having the pass that got tipped where Giles Jackson was open, the confusion on the route. Was it Denzel Boston or Giles Jackson? What happened in the one end zone against Rutgers? For whatever reason, they have not been consistent down there, but it's been a very small sample size, but it has been crushing. Too many field goals, not enough touchdowns, and it's a problem that they've got to fix. What is it exactly? I think it's been a little bit of something different in each of those. I think right now they're 115th in red zone offense, which is just not good enough. It's just not good enough.
Well, right now they're like 130th in points per play or points for yards per play because they're one of the top 10 teams in terms of defense and offense in the country combined. But to me, these players that are on the field have been around a long time. I mean, they might have been for other teams and stuff, but these guys got to know the bonehead 15-year-old penalties got to stop. Got to stop. I mean, that's on the player. I mean, there are some things where the coaching staff, to me, has made me want to pull their hair out. Coming out of timeouts, that's been a problem. Coming out of timeouts has been a problem. And whether it's a third down or defense or whatever it might be, they've had issues running the play coming out of a timeout. That can't happen, right? There can't be any confusion coming out of a timeout. That has to get fixed. Where now maybe, like you say, you give Will Rogers several different options. On the defensive side of the ball, same thing. But coaching staff in the red area, 100%. That's on the coaching staff. Unfortunate event, the ball got tipped. He's wide open. I thought, but don't get to third down. These are the things that you have Jonah Coleman. I mean, to me, I think you run him till you really can't run him anymore, in my opinion, when you get into that red area, inside the 20-yard line, 10-yard line. But these players deserve as much criticism as anybody. I don't care. Some of these guys are getting paid more money than you and I. So they need to make sure that they do the right thing on the football field. You know what I mean? But
I think most of them are getting paid more than you and I, Jordan.
Yeah, I think a lot of them. unless you're making a lot more money than we know.
Right. Oh no, I got 8 kids, but it's one of those things where, to me, these players have to clean this stuff up, and it's about composure. And yes, that comes back to coaching and being able to have that, but also it's almost what I expected, because when you look at the roster and how it was, put together, I was very optimistic about the season getting to that, possibly 8-9 wins and then maybe, 9-10 wins at the bowl game, which could have been very possible. But one of those things that happened was, for whatever reason, leadership within the entire organization right now is not showing that they can clean these things up. The Wazoo game happened again. That's what really pisses me off as a Husky fan. It cannot happen again. The penalties, really. And like I said, the Wazoo game, give them credit. John Mateer had some freak plays that maybe only he can make. And that was really the difference in the game, right? And there was a couple bad play calls and bad penalties. But without John Mateer, I think the Cougs probably get blown out by the Huskies because he's that special, right? But to me, this Rutgers game's having it happen again, God, that pisses me off, and it's on everybody. It's on the players. It's on the coaches. But I mean, don't let the players off the hook, dude. They're better than that. They're smarter than that. They played football for 15 years. They know what they're doing.
Do you run, at least you run the risk when you do this, when you have so many transfers and you hit the portal so much as they did?
Had to.
I don't think they had a choice, guys. Like their roster was decimated. This is honest to goodness. I think Jed Fish, in terms of the transfer portal and doing what he could do in such a short amount of time, you're talking about after the national championship game. Everybody else has been out recruiting for weeks and hit the transfer portal. The amount of people that left through the draft and through the transfer portal, fifth-year guys, your most experienced starting guys left to go play 1 year somewhere else. I mean, that was like devastating for them to. I have been amazed at what they were able to do to fortify the roster. I was worried they wouldn't even have an offensive line. In the spring game, there was like 7 linemen on the roster total. So the way that they're playing, Brennan Carroll should be given a ton of kudos for how that offense, they've looked good. They've looked really good. They've had a couple of untimely penalties, but other than that, I think the offensive line has been good. And they've had some real strengths on this roster. The worry that I have is the snowball effect of the disappointment of not finishing 2 games they could have, and some say should have won. And when that starts to creep in your head of, oh my God, we're in the red zone. Okay, you got to finish. And sometimes that gets in your head and then you get tight and bad things happen. Will they get amount of confidence from moving the football the way they've done, to, putting up the yards, the balance? Can they take that and then use that to improve and punch it in the end zone? Or are they going to take a step backwards? It's going to be the story of this season of whether or not they're really good offensively. They just have had a hard time in the red zone, which is the key to everything. Or are they going to be a team that then feels sorry for themselves and has some problems? So, I mean, to me, that's what it is. But in terms of the transfer portal and guys coming together, I mean, it doesn't matter. That's the task at hand, and it will be from now on until something changes with college football.
Well, like I said, this locker room is unlike any Husky locker room, or maybe any locker room outside of maybe Colorado, really in the history of college football, right? With all the new guys. I mean, 45, 50 new guys. So it is uncharted territory. I don't want to make excuses, though, because they've done so well with it, but they just haven't been able to really finish, and whether it's finished drives, finished plays without penalties. But to me, this game right here, is really it's massive. It's the biggest game, obviously, I think, of the season in terms of what Elise said, where this football team is going to go. Because you're talking about, if you lose this game, you got a really rough schedule ahead. You're looking at how are you going to keep your roster intact with the guys that you want to keep? How are you going to continue to recruit at a high level? There's so many things that go into this game. It's massive. I mean, you don't want to give that to the players. But the coaches know this game is for all the marbles, because this game can either set us back to where we're back in the conversation for a college football playoff spot in 25 and 26, or we're going to be rebuilding again in 2025 because we're losing all our good players because we went 4-8, right? So there's a lot of stuff that goes into this game that can be huge.
Is it too early? Elise, you go first to classify this as a must-win game for them against Michigan this weekend?
Well, I mean, I hesitate to say must win when it's in the first half of the season. But in football, you only get so many gimmies. You only get so many times where, I mean, 1 or 2 losses is huge in a college football season. So I think that at home, you want to try to go undefeated at home and then at least 500 on the road, right? Well, they've lost one on neutral field. They've lost one on the road. And so this is it's a huge game for them. I think more so if you beat Michigan at home, I think the crowd is still going to be amped. I think they're going to be fired up. There's going to be a lot of people because of the national championship game last year, there's a chance at revenge and a chance at, a lot of different things with both programs, restarting in 2024, that I think it's going to be a great opportunity for them, and it would boost them a ton. If they don't win this game, I don't think it's like, oh yeah, it doesn't matter the rest of the season. Like, I don't believe that at all. I still think that there's a ton of season left, but the way the schedule lines up, they're Michigan at home, they're at Iowa, and then they have a bye week. So these 2 games, in terms of your health and in terms of your focus and in terms of, getting a little respite, that'll come. You've got these 2 games right now, and that's all you can worry about, right? And first up is Michigan at home in a game that, is winnable. There's no question. It's not like you're not facing it. You're what's the line? The early line. I heard UW was favored. I haven't looked at it. So I mean, it's expected to be competitive.
What do we got now, Puck? What's the lineup?
I think the Huskies, last time I checked, were favored by 3, and I would assume if that line holds, and we'll see if it does hold, other than the UCLA game, that's going to be the last time they're going to be favored in a game.
Yeah.
Because you're at Iowa, at Indiana, you get USC at home, at Penn State, and then the Bruins, and then at Oregon.
No, absolutely. That's why, to me, this is, and like Elise said, this is a 2-game season now where you just lost Javon Parker, probably your best interior defensive lineman, right? And all these things have went against them in these 2 games that they've lost. And so there's so many things right now where this team really has to either galvanize and figure out a way to clean these things up, because there's so many positives that they can use when they watch film, and the coaching staff can really motivate these guys. It's like, you guys are some of the best in the business and best in the nation and so many things. Here's a couple things that we clean up, and now we're in a position to continue to battle for whatever their goals are this year. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they're talking about, getting to a certain amount of wins, getting to, whatever it is, championship. I'm not sure. But the big thing for me is that this team right now is kind of teetering, right? It's teetering right now where Washington was in the national championship game 8 months ago, right? Now this team is in a position where if they lose this game, they're possibly looking at breaking their streak of having at least 6 wins and going to a bowl game. And I mean, there's a ton of stuff on the line. So to me, this is huge. I mean, this is everybody on, whether it's the fans and obviously the coaching staff and the players, everybody has to be dialed in this week, because Iowa's a winnable game, but this game right now at home with what's happened so far, we have to win at home. You have to protect home field. That's just the way it is.
Jordan, does it make it more, I don't know what the right word is. I don't know if problematic is not the right word, but they have so many new people that are on this team that did not have anything to do with the national championship. So the motivation, revenge, hatred, whatever some players would have, a Carson Bruner, there's a lot on this team. Coleman doesn't have it. Will Rogers won't have it. Does that hurt them in the game against Michigan, or in some weird way does that help them against the Wolverines Saturday?
No, I think you got, I think it's hit or miss, but I think a lot of these guys are in a position where it doesn't matter that obviously the scoreboard was reflecting in the national championship game where they got whipped. That was a 1-score ball game in the fourth quarter. A lot of things happened to make it look a lot worse than it was, but a lot of guys are, looking at this at a motivation game, but not just because it's Michigan, but because they lost. Now they're 3-2. This is not the standard at the University of Washington. So not just that revenge factor, but, this is not something that Washington does, where it's been a long time. They were 27-2 or 27-3, something like that, coming into the season. So they haven't lost a lot of games, these guys that have been there, the Bruners and Cab Fams and Elijah Jacksons and all these guys, they got a lot of pride. So I think that revenge in the national championship game, but also, like I said, getting this program back on track and making sure to leave it better than they found it's on these guys' minds as well.
Elise, just in terms of that, just to follow up on that point there by Jordan, how much can you use last year as a motivation this weekend?
Well, I think for the fans, it's absolutely there. For the program, Jed Fish is very open about, hey, this was last year's team. This is what they accomplished. Like, there's a lot of guys that are still here from the team. The vibe of using the fact that you were in the national championship, like, they want to use that, certainly. Is it going to be, individual players? Personally, I don't know, even if you had all 22 returners on both sides of the football coming back, would it be the number one storyline that they want revenge? No, I think that stuff is overplayed in the media, and I think it's overplayed. That's for the fans. So this is for the fans. The fans want to say, suck it to Michigan, and that's the fans thing. For the players, you hope they take motivation from anything. But I'll say about, and I always say this, the players' motivation is to play really well and to win the game and to individually have success out there on the field. Whatever it is that motivates them to do that, I think it's overblown for people that blame a coach if a team comes out flat. It's on the players and the leaders in there to get them up. And, I do think the fans help with that, with the vibe and getting there early with the kickoff and all of those things. Certainly, watching the players warm up on the sideline before a game, they're taking it in. you can see when they're amped up and when they're not. And I think they have every reason, all of them will be fired up and amped up on Saturday at 4:30.
Hey, Jordan, I've been in a locker room and been in a program for 4 or 5 years. Is it hard, though, to find leadership with so many new faces? You've talked about it a little bit here, but I think it was last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, that you have different, factions of the football team, right? You've got Washington and you've got some Porto guys, and then you got the Arizona guys. I mean, is that hard for one individual to stand up to, because you got a lot of guys in there who haven't, been in the program for all that long?
No, absolutely. I think that, especially this year, it is such a unique challenge for this Husky team to have that steady leadership because of the fact of the cliquish nature of the way things are now. And in a locker room where you bring up, 8, 10, 12 guys from Arizona, and then you have your 8, 10, 12 guys from other programs, right? And then you have your base guys that didn't play last year. Then you have your starters and contributors from last year that played that, basically now those guys are the ones that should be carrying the torch as leaders this year. And I'm not knocking the leadership, but I think it's a unique situation where it's tough because, when I was playing and even before I got there, like when I was getting recruited, the Huskies had an amazing leadership structure in like 2000, 2001 when I was in high school, where, the coaches didn't have to really get after guys because the players did. And that's when I went a lot of football games in 2000 and 2001, when that leadership group, everybody was scared of those guys. They were scared to make a mistake. They were scared to get a penalty because they knew you were hurting the team and you were hurting your brothers. And those are things that I think need to really get, I don't know, we used to do the moat crawl back in the day and all kinds of stuff. But they need to get the fear of God in some of those guys to where you don't ever let your brothers down. You don't let the team down by getting a penalty, right? And some penalties are different, right? There's a different type of penalty. But the dumb, bonehead penalties have to stop. And there has to be some accountability where I'm surprised nobody's got a black eye yet. There hasn't been a news media report of somebody who's got a broken nose, right? Or somebody lost a tooth in the shower, right? Because those are things that happen on a good Husky football team, and they've happened in the past when guys step out of line.
Are you volunteering, Jordan?
I might have to, right? Because look at it. It was such an unfortunate event that's happened the last couple losses, and I think that guys know now. I thought it'd be done after the Wazoo game, the dumb penalties, but now we're looking at, hey, this needs to be top down. Coach Fish saying, I'm just going to tell them not to commit penalties. There's got to be a different way of doing things, Coach Fish, because these damn penalties keep coming up. So whatever it is, whatever those guys, that leadership team, that leadership group, somebody needs to send a message to where this is unacceptable, cannot happen, right, moving forward. And that's the way it goes. And I don't know, maybe, it's 2024. It's probably a little different. Maybe you put somebody in timeout. You probably can't give anybody a black eye anymore. Maybe you take their phone away for a couple hours. No.
That's
hey,
great.
Elise, let's reenact your half, because I was in the car when I heard this. Jordan, did you hear the halftime with her and Fish? Let's reenact it. I'll be Jed. Hold on, do I have a visor anywhere? I don't have a visor. Let's reenact it Can we reenact it real quick?
Sure.
Okay,
sure.
You go ahead. You got to play yourself.
So, Coach, the penalties seem to be really hurting you.
Yeah, they're done. We can't commit them.
Yeah, and so what do you tell the team about?
Don't commit the goddamn penalties.
Thanks, Coach.
Yeah, see you later. It was kind of, I don't think he said goddamn, but God, that was funny. I was laughing my ass off when you were doing.
You know what? I've had a couple people ask me, they're like, man, Coach Fish was kind of fired up. And I'm like, well, wouldn't you be? Like, he wasn't mad at me.
No, right.
It's not like he should have been pissed off. Like,
sure,
I think every Husky fan was pissed off, right? So
he didn't go full Gilby on Sandmeyer, but
no.
Days,
well,
man.
To be fair, and I make fun of Sandy, I wouldn't go up to me like, real lack of discipline there, Coach Fish.
That was the best one ever, though.
Who made you coach?
Oh, God, that was the greatest.
We actually, I talked about that at halftime because I did get that vibe. I was kind of laughing like, well, at least I didn't, he was a little more gentle.
Yeah. It was great though. You handled it perfectly. You were like running. You could tell you were out of breath. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. Like, I'm glad I could provide you with entertainment.
It was good. Jordan, you mentioned it earlier, just switch to Michigan here and just looking at the game. I mean, they run the ball. This kid does not throw the ball at all. This Alex, now no one laugh, Alex Orgy. No one laugh at his last name.
Right.
It's not funny. All right.
I
he took over for Davis. Well, I'll have plenty of jokes on Saturday for this guy. He took over Davis Warren. He's attempted only 30 passes. 30. And he doesn't really carry it all that much, though. Only like 22 times for like 55 yards or something. I mean, they're one-dimensional, right, Jordan? They're just going to run the ball. How do you, I mean, that. What do? You just put 11 guys at the line of scrimmage and just say, we dare you to throw the ball.
Well, what's interesting is that, for the most part, number one, the Husky defense has been amazing. Coach Belichick deserves a ton of credit. He's been awesome. They're thin at D-line. They're thin in some other spots up front. And what they did against Rutgers was very similar. I mean, and they talked about it on the broadcast, and the broadcast was terrible, but they talked about it a lot where, the Huskies had 7, 8 guys, 9 guys in the box, and we, put up 2 high safeties. Doesn't happen, right? When you're playing a running team. And so to me, it's going to be one of those things where very similar to a Rutgers or a lot of Big Ten teams. I mean, you look at Penn State, Iowa, they're all going to be that way. It seems Rutgers, all these guys are, they're running. They don't have the quarterbacks that we've seen on the West Coast. The Pac-12 kind of always dominated with, I think, that high-flying passing offense. And now we're moving towards that kind of grinded out run game, which obviously Michigan has. But it does not help that Parker is out for the season. He was a huge body. I loved his ass, his legs. He was so much fun to watch in terms of just his body type. And they're not in a way that is gay. It's okay, but it's just not my style. But Coach Hart used to talk about it all the time. We'd love it because he'd talk, look at his ass. Oh, look at it jiggle. We love that ass, and I was always the goofy knock-kneed little ass guy, so he'd make fun of me. But anyways, so the Husky defense to me has to really blow up because being against a one-dimensional offense like Michigan, you know what's coming. You got to stop it. And like in the national championship game, obviously they had better players, I think, in the national championship game. Their offensive line, their running back, their quarterback, obviously, and the receivers. But to me, they got to shut that down, stop the run, and then really make sure they can't pass. Because, if you give up 180, 200 yards rushing, that's okay as long as they don't score 30 points and they don't throw for another 200-300 yards, right? So, I mean, there's a difference between giving up some rush yards, but just make sure you can't hit that play action down the seam. The secondary, the linebackers have done really well.
At least this guy's not this guy last week against Minnesota was 10 of 18 for 86 yards, a touchdown and a pick. And then against USC, he was 7 of 12 for 32 yards.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the question is, can you stop it, right? You know what's going to happen. He is athletic. He hasn't tucked it a lot, but he is capable of that. And the Huskies have had some issues, obviously back to the Apple Cup, with Mateer of a running quarterback. So that's obviously a concern. When you do one thing really, really well, it's the old Jim Harbaugh Stanford style as well that, hey, y'all know you're going to go heavy up there and your defensive line better be stout and you better have your linebackers in the proper gaps. Watching that Minnesota film, they just needed a couple gaps, Michigan, and it was off to the races. Their back Mullen is good. So you got to stop it. You know what's coming. You got to stop it. And I think it's a huge loss for Parker. He was their best interior lineman, and it's an unfortunate injury for that kid for sure. So their depth will be tested in that spot, and their linebackers are going to have to be stout. Zach Durfee on the edge. You'd love to see him in there, but it sounds like he's still dealing with a toe injury. So probably, one of the weaknesses is up front defensively for UW right now compared to the strength for Michigan. So, that's going to be the story of the game, is if they can find a way to put enough bodies up there and be strong enough and hold their ground, then they'll win the game. But it's a tall task for sure.
Yeah, Jordan, you're pretty. Go ahead. You're pretty confident that they're going to win the game on Saturday.
No, I am. To me, the way that this lines out is I see playing at home. This crowd is going to be insane. I think this is going to be one of those games that's going to be Coach Fish's signature win as he gets going. It's going to really trampoline this team into that next phase of getting into the Big Ten and being able to compete. And I think that one of those things that has to happen this game, as you're watching it, they cannot give up big chunk plays on first and second down, because what they have to do, the key to victory, and this is probably obvious to a lot of people that know football, but they got to be in third and long. They have to be in third and long, and then obviously they got to get off the field. That was a problem with penalties on third and long, and then giving up, obviously, a third and 12 or a third and 15 is absolutely, mind-numbing for guys watching the game, and it's always going to be second and long, third and long, screen draw, always, right? No. So make sure that the Huskies, to me, they have the skill set. They're actually better than I thought they would be. Which is crazy, being at 3-2 record. This football team has played better than I thought they were going to play, and a bunch of 90% of the games. Obviously, penalties, third down efficiency for offense, and then really in the red area. Those are things that obviously they have to get better at. Denzel Boston's a dude. He's going to be an NFL guy. Giles Jackson has been unreal, right? Jonah Coleman is an NFL guy, top NFL guy. Will Rogers has been one of the most efficient, best quarterbacks in the country. Probably the best quarterback in the Big Ten, outside of maybe. No, he's better than Dylan Gabriel because he's from Oregon, but they've been really good. Their defense has been really, really well coached. They have great schemes. So I've been really impressed, and I think they put it all together this Saturday against Michigan with a chip on their shoulder.
Elise got out ahead of it. She knew we were wrapping up, and she said, "You know what? F you guys. I'm taking off." All right. Well, F you, Elise, too. Jordan Reffett right there. Elise Woodward. Another edition of Puck the Huskies podcast brought to you by Georgetown Brewery, locally owned by two diehard Husky fans, Manny and Roger. Go taste their beer. Go drink it out of them. Manny's Pale Ale, Rogers Pilsner. They've got a host of other great beers there as well. Tap room is open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., 7 days a week. Visit them at georgetownbeer.com. You can find this anywhere you find your podcast, on YouTube, also Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast, and of course, at pucksports.com. Jordan, we'll talk to you next week. Thank you, sir.
You got it, buddy. Go Dogs. Let's go.